Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 99 of Fracking Nightmare. And today is almost exactly 3 years since the start of the Barton Moss campaign. I think we were at episode 4 or so at the start of that. So, this is nearly 100 episodes in a little over 3 years. And next week, we'll be looking at some of the remarkable events that have transpired, which have contributed to keeping the UK frack-free for 4 years since the moratorium was lifted in 2012. But it's very evident that in many respects, 2017 is going to be another factor completely. In fact, 2017 is going to be seminal in determining whether this industry actually manages to get a foothold in the UK or not. So after we've done episode 100, which will be next week, and it'll be a joint celebration really, because it's episode 100 on December the 5th, which also happens to be my father's 88th birthday. So I'll catch with him the day before heading back to Plymouth to broadcast episode 100. And I will be joined by Mike Robinson of UK Column, who has been sitting behind the scenes and produced pretty much all of the 100 shows that we have broadcast over the last 3 years or so. So then we'll be taking a bit of a break because things are really going to start to kick off, and we'll be looking at some different strategies around the UK. So there won't be any further Fracking Nightmares after next week until the new year. But I will be keeping people abreast of what's occurring, primarily via Twitter. I mean, obviously also on Facebook. But for those people who elect not to follow on Facebook, then here's the Twitter account. It's simply at Ian R. Crane. And of course, we'll be doing our level best to respond to all of the blatant PR tweets put out by the unconventional gas companies. Now, I would also like to acknowledge the fantastic contribution that people have made to support me in my activities. And, it's still a case of living on fumes. But I just trust that whatever will be there when I need it. But if you do feel that you can make a contribution, there's 2 websites where you could actually make a donation. It's a contribution to the Fracking Awareness Campaign. And pretty much everything that I get, whether it's from DVDs or donations, goes right back in to the fracking awareness activities. Obviously, there's many other people and groups also doing, they're making their own contribution. But I operate completely independently. I don't take any donations from any corporations or any charities, preferring instead to be completely independent and relying on individual donations to my activities. Right, that's enough of that. Now, last week, we ended the show with a look at what's been going on at Standing Rock. Now, this isn't specifically addressing the unconventional gas industry, but it is addressing the pipeline. And in particular, it's addressing a pipeline that is used, or will be used, to transport tar sands, which is an extremely aggressive and really another abomination. I mean, fortunately, we don't have tar sands in the UK, but it leaves a phenomenal mess on the landscape. And this is the issue. This is the Dakota Access pipeline, which runs across 4 states. And you can see there, running from the northwest down to the southeast. from North Dakota down through South Dakota, Iowa, and Illinois. And you see the area up here, right up in the northwestern corner. I mean, this is the area that is being addressed. Now, this is the reservation area, Standing Rock Reservation, and this has united the indigenous population and many, many other people right across the US. And in fact, there is pretty much a media blackout. So it's very difficult for people to access information of what's occurring at Standing Rock through the mainstream. They actually have to, like many things today, have to revert to the alternative media. But why are pipelines such an issue? Well, the US is in a very, very different situation regarding pipelines than that of the UK. And this is a map which shows the pipeline network across the United States. And since 1986, there has been some 7,978 incidents. And in addition, from those incidents, there's been some 512 fatalities, 2,360 injuries, and the damage to property has been in excess of $6.8 billion, nearly $7 billion. Now, this is over a period of 27 years, but I want to show you a short animation which shows the magnitude of the pipeline incidents and where they have occurred over that period. So take a look at this. So that's nearly 8,000 pipeline incidents, many of which, in fact, the vast majority of which never actually get publicized. In fact, the media ensures that it is just localized so that only people in the immediate vicinity are generally aware. But imagine coming home to this. This is from about 3 years ago in 2013. This is the Exxon pipeline. It's called a spill, but it's a lot more than a spill. It's literally a gush. And this is on the Northwoods area in Arkansas. And this went on for a number of weeks before the leak was dealt with. And the oil percolates into the soil, so much so that it undermines the foundations of properties. And this led Exxon to determine that there was actually no alternative but to demolish some of the properties in this housing estate. So take a look at this. This is actually an Exxon representative talking about what's going on at these house demolitions. Take a look at this.
32 and 36 North Starlight, it's been determined that demolition is a effective, efficient way to remove any remaining oil from beneath the foundations. We just took down 32 and 36 is scheduled next. We appreciate the help from the Mayflower Fire Department, the Police Department, the City of Mayflower, and Faulkner County along with the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality and the Arkansas Department of Health, who are on site today. And again, this is part of the next step in the remediation process to get the Northwood subdivision back to normal.
To get the Northwoods subdivision back to normal, as though it was almost like an everyday occurrence. Well, the industry goes to extreme lengths to ensure that the amount of awareness is minimized. And RT actually reported, and I've got the report here, that the Federal Aviation Authority put a no-fly zone over the Arkansas oil spill. But get this, with an Exxon employee in charge. So the FAA announced a temporary no-fly zone would be enacted indefinitely over the Arkansas oil spill, with word that an Exxon employee was controlling the airspace, though speculation pointed to the idea the oil company was trying to keep the media away. No, Sherlock. Well, you know, that's same happened, of course, in the Gulf Coast during the BP Deepwater Horizon, where effectively BP took responsibility for keeping the media away. So you start to get the picture. So when a company wants to run a pipeline through ancient traditional lands, particularly lands that are sacred to the indigenous people, then you can understand why it is that maybe there's a little bit of a reaction. Now, last week, just as we went on air, in fact, a few hours before we went on air, all hell broke loose at Standing Rock. And at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning of last week, the militarized police and other federal agencies at Standing Rock unleashed the full range of their toys on the peaceful protectors at Standing Rock. And we've got a short piece of video which gives you an idea of what the people that have dedicated themselves to preventing this abomination being established on their sacred lands, what they had to endure. So take a look at this.
Hands up!
This is a test of the long-range acoustic device LRAD.
This guy got shot with that bullet right there and he caught it.
Where did he hit you? Right there?
Now, don't think for 1 minute that the British police forces wouldn't do the same thing if they had access to the same toys and were given permission to do so. So we can be very thankful that that is not yet the case. But if this was happening in Russia, North Korea, or Iran, then the media would be all over this, claiming that this was a fundamental breach of human rights and how atrocious it is that these countries treat their peaceful protesters in this way. But this is the land of the free. Of course, it's not the land of the free. That is just a myth that's created. And the federal agencies are using a combination of rubber bullets, concussion grenades, stun grenades, water cannon. And the water is particularly vicious in the freezing temperatures in North Dakota at this time of year. And in fact, I gather that that whole area is now under snow. Well, during the course of that confrontation, a young lady by the name of Sonia Wilansky, unfortunately, was hit by a stun grenade in the arm, in the left arm, causing very severe damage. Now, I am going to show the photographs of what occurred, so this is quite disturbing. So if you don't want to see it, then look away right now. But what you see here, this is obviously on the right-hand side, is the close-up of the damage. Now, Sonia, fortunately, is in hospital in Minnesota, I believe. And, although she hasn't lost the arm yet, there is still risk that she may have to have the arm amputated. Now, last Monday evening, a crowdfund was set up to source some funds for her medical expenses. And within the space of less than 24 hours, nearly $250,000 had been raised. And as of earlier this evening, that had increased to $392,000. Now, sadly, knowing how the US medical system works, you can be pretty sure that whatever number appears on the crowdfund, that will be the cost of her medical treatment. Sadly, that's the way that works. And of course, that's exactly what will happen in the UK in the not too distant future as the NHS is dismantled. But already the propaganda has kicked in. And this is from an extreme right-wing website called bearingarms.com, so the clue is in the name. And here's a quote from Lieutenant Tom Iverson of the North Dakota Highway Patrol. He says, "We are aware of the information about the woman on social media who has claimed she sustained injuries to her arm due to law enforcement tactics. The injuries sustained are inconsistent with any resources utilized by law enforcement and are not a direct result of any tools or weapons used by law enforcement." So what happened? Well, what they're claiming is that protesters using improvised explosive devices caused an explosion on the Backwater Bridge around about 3 a.m. last Monday morning. Law enforcement witnessed protesters rolling cylinders onto the bridge and witnessed an explosion. Shortly after, they saw several protesters run to that area of the bridge and carried a woman off the bridge. Once the scene was clear, investigators examined the bridge and found 1-pound Coleman propane tanks that were rigged to explode on the bridge. So this is the law enforcement agencies trying to obviously distance themselves from what occurred. But you saw in the video, the range of munitions that were being fired into peaceful protesters. Well, I'm pleased to say that the British media did pick up on this, and The Guardian actually made the observation that Sonia's father said the police account is bogus nonsense. Officers claim protesters set off explosion, but Sonia Wilansky's father and on-site medical professionals say the injury is entirely consistent with the grenade blast. North Dakota law enforcement have blamed protesters for a woman's grievous injury, despite assertions from a woman's father and a witness to the incident that she was hit by a police concussion grenade. Sonia Wilansky, an environmental activist from New York, was hospitalized in Minneapolis, where surgeons were attempting to repair a severe injury to her left arm that destroyed arteries, nerves, muscle, soft tissue, and bone. According to her father, she remains at risk of amputation, and if the arm is salvaged, it will probably have limited functionality. North Dakota law enforcement officers have aggressively countered Wilansky's account, releasing multiple statements accusing protesters of setting off an explosion. The Highway Patrol also released photographs of propane cylinders recovered from the scene of confrontation, which they said were used as explosives. And these are the photographs that they released. Well, this is, of course, the classic. I mean, on a much lower scale, we've seen similar propaganda, of course, at Barton Moss, when Greater Manchester Police accused the protection community of firing a flare at a police helicopter. Of course, it was total fabrication. And funnily enough, once the police had got their warrant and searched the camp, any further reference to the alleged incident actually just disappeared. And of course, had a flare been fired at a police helicopter, then the anti-terrorist squad would have been all over Barton Moss and all over the private airfield in a heartbeat. Plus, of course, every CCTV camera within probably 2 or 3 miles would have had the blinding flash. And of course, there was no such incident. So this is the level of propaganda that's put out by the establishment. But it's very clear that, although obviously the toys that the law enforcement agencies have in the US are far, far more malicious than anything available yet to UK police forces, nonetheless, they will use everything within their power to try to push through their agenda. Now, before we take a break, and after the break, I'm going to be joined by Sue Goff from North Yorkshire. But we have an event, an unusual event in my old hometown of Totnes. And I will be screening the shorter version of Voices from the Gasfields. That's the 20-minute version, followed by presentation and Q&A. But we're also going to be discussing some other critical issues, such as looking at the rule of law, looking at Cestui Kivi, which is the strategy that I use to contest the bankruptcy that Rathlin Energy were trying to drive me into earlier in the year. And also looking at divestment and other avenues of peaceful resistance. So that's this Wednesday at the Seven Stars Hotel at the bottom of Totnes High Street. So you're in the southwest, please do come along. It's going to be a very interesting evening, and you will meet, I'm sure, with like-minded people. So last week, we had John and Val Marga talking about the Jerry activists and the power of community. And of course, David and Brian Monk from Australia make it very clear that ultimately, it really doesn't matter what administrative steps you take or judicial steps you take to shut this industry down. Ultimately, it comes down to the power of community. And ultimately, it's down to each and every one of us. So we'll take a short break and take a look at this from David and Brian Monk.
If at this point in time you can stand in front of a drill rig and stop it from getting on. The easiest drill rig to stop's the first one. The hardest one will be the 10,000. It'll be more than that though in the UK, because you're doing shale over there predominantly. Shale needs a lot of wells, needs a lot of destruction, poisons a lot of water.
If this gets the tiniest foothold, you're done. So it's now or it's never. Don't think that you've got that long, because it's now or never. So you do it now, you stand up now, and you find something within yourself that you didn't think was there. That's the important thing. You will be confronted by police. They wear their Kevlar suits and it's a big intimidation thing.
Hey, you've got nobody in front of you. Keep walking in the way of this lady. Keep going. Don't push back on her. Keep moving. Now.
If you've got to
Keep going.
the officer on your left, keep moving, please.
It's up to the people of the UK to get their cameras in the face of the Kevlar security, the Kevlar police who are paid by the corporations. And we have to say no. That's all it is. But it's more than just saying no at a meeting. It's intent. It's the intent of no. It's the knowing that you mean no. That's when you will be unbelievably powerful. You come out in numbers. If they see your grandmother and the mother and the child come out and say, we are not going to accept this, then they are finished. But that's what it takes. Don't sit back and think that anybody's looking out for you. It's you.
Powerful words from Brian and David Monk. Now I'm joined by Sue Goff from North Yorkshire. So Sue, I know we had a few problems with our Skype connectivity, but it's wonderful to have you back on Fracking Nightmare. And I love the backdrop, by the way.
I went to the Royal Courts of Justice last week.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll see that in some of the photographs that we've got when we talk about the JR. But you're actually a resident of Kirby Misperton, am I right?
No, I live just up the road from Kirby Misperton. I live in Little Bath, and it's less than a mile from the well site. So I've been involved, and I was a founder member of Frack Free Kirby Misperton. Seems like many years ago, but it's just over 2.5 years ago now.
Right. So you're less than a mile from the well site, which means you're about 1.5 miles from the village, but you're not actually a resident of Kirby Misperton. But I want to bring up this map here just so that people can see that where you are, and Kirby Misperton, of course, is right here, right in the middle of this area. And you are basically totally surrounded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, completely surrounded, and doesn't feel good.
No, I bet. Now, let's have a look at go back to that picture, and let's have a look at the antagonists who are determined to literally frack the bejesus out of North Yorkshire. Because you've got multiple players here. So we've got Third Energy with this split license. So right across the Vale of Pickering, and then up to the north of Scarborough. Then we have Moorland Exploration, which they do actually have permission to drill a well near Danby. But I'm not sure that they're going to do anything anytime soon. Then we have, of course, the infamous Quadrilla, who in the 14th round managed to get a significant chunk. So this crescent of pink is all Quadrilla. And then iGas, the infamous iGas. Of course, as I said in the part 1, it's 3 years since the start of the Barton Moss campaign, and iGas won't be going back to Barton Moss anytime soon. But it looks like they've actually got permission to start drilling in 2 wells in Nottinghamshire. Yeah. But then you also have INEOS. And this is about a half, or maybe a little more than a half. So this is something in the region of about 500,000 acres across, well, it extends into east, but east and north and South Yorkshire. And there you are stuck in the middle. And of course, this is just the first well. Absolutely. And so if Third Energy do actually manage to frack this well and they find what they hope to find, what's your prognosis for that entire area? Well,
I mean, if they're successful, they've been given the go-ahead by the government. It's a floodgate. It opens the floodgates for the whole area where we live, which is rural, peaceful farmland, and a huge draw for tourists, to be completely and utterly industrialised. It does not make sense, because rural tourism is the main revenue for this area. If you're going to destroy that, the money that is created from the fracking isn't coming to local people. That's going to the companies, the gas and oil companies. So it's going to devastate entirely this area in so many ways. And it's not going to happen, not on our watch anyway.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right about the tourism industry. And I mean, this is a map that I've shown, or graphic that I've shown many times before. And this is the well site down in the bottom left of the picture. And then Flamingo Land, which is pretty much the other side of the village, but the distance in a straight line between the well site and Flamingo Land is exactly 1 kilometre.
Yeah,
and Flamingo Land, I believe, is North Yorkshire's largest revenue earner.
It is, yeah, it is. And also it participates in rare breeding programmes and all sorts of things, protected species. So you can't begin to imagine the kind of damage that fracking in the vicinity of very sensitive animals can do, let alone the local wildlife. It leaves me speechless, actually. But that's what we're up against.
Well, Flamingo Land were actually quite late in coming to the party, really, weren't they? They sat on the fence for a long, long time.
Yeah, they did, and I'm not sure why. They obviously had their reasons, as did quite a few people, I think, in the area, but they've come on board now, so let's hope that their weight, plus some other major landowners that have supported us, that will all have an effect. But, at the moment, who knows? We're all waiting with bated breath to find out what the next step will be.
Well, because let's go back a bit, because before North Yorkshire County Council considered the application back in May, I think I'm right in saying that every single parish council voted not to have fracking in their area. And Rydale District Council, and I was actually at that meeting a little over a year ago last year, where it was absolute pantomime. And if I hadn't been there myself, I would never have believed that such a farcical situation could exist at a district council. But full credit to the councillors who literally took on the chair and the clerk and the legal advisor to get a vote. And that vote, of course, was not unanimous, but almost unanimous, to vote against Third Energy being granted permission.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So when it came to the planning meeting in Northallerton in May, am I right in saying that every single parish council, Rydale District Council, and something like 90+% of the submissions were against the project?
So over 4,000 against the application, and I think something like 30 odd that were for it, and not one of those 30 live in or near the village. So that was very interesting, and the whole process was very, very difficult to witness, to be honest.
Did you actually sit in on the meeting?
I didn't sit in with much. I was speaking to a lot of people outside, and I was listening to things that were happening. Some of my friends went and listened intently to proceedings, and they found it interesting but very, very disheartening. And I was actually in on the proceedings on the final day, on the Monday, and I gave my representation, and it was very obvious that that the planning committee were not interested in any of the new evidence that was produced, nor had they bothered to read any of the real evidence that had been handed to them. It felt, as a layperson, I'm not at all, I don't understand legal issues or anything, but it really did feel like a foregone conclusion. They were doing as they were told. They didn't care. Not one of the people on the planning committee lived in Rydale, and we just felt betrayed, actually.
Well, from my observation, yes, the I think it was 4 people who voted against were actually very active during the hearing, and at the end of the hearing articulated their reasons for voting against extremely well. Those who were pro basically did nothing for 2 days. I mean, it seemed to me that they were literally under instruction from Tory headquarters that all they had to do was sit there for 2 days, and then when the time came to vote, stick their hand up. Because, I mean, you could have got a monkey, a stuffed monkey, to basically, do the same thing.
And that's exactly how it felt, sort of being there. It's a mockery, really, of what should be proper legal proceedings and justice, actually, and democracy. It's a complete and utter betrayal of all the things that, as English people, you hold dear. And we have said no. Local people have all said no.
Well, but let's make one thing very clear here as well, because I mean, obviously, Lancashire is a Labour-controlled council, but North Yorkshire is very much a Tory stronghold, and in fact, I believe that Rydale or Kevin Hollinsnake, his constituency is one of the safest Tory constituencies in the country.
Unfortunately.
So this is Tory heartland. And this is the party representative, because I mean, once upon a time, MPs actually really did give the impression that they went into Westminster to represent the will of the electorate. But of course, today they are simply party representatives telling the local community what's going to happen, basically.
That's how it feels too. And it's interesting because we had a meeting to which Kevin was invited many months back, and he did attend, and he made a very great show of listening to individuals and to our group representation to him, and then was very reassuring and talked about 6 miles, a mile from people's homes as where, you know, there should be a buffer zone, etc., etc. But since then, he's done his utmost, really, to pave the way for the frackers, and has completely disregarded us. And to the point where we've not been invited to meetings. When we've held meetings, he was very clear that there should be a balance, where, you know, he would not attend meetings unless there was a balanced point of view to be had. But we've not been invited to his meetings, and he has refused to countenance the new evidence that is coming out all the time that shows how dangerous fracking is, refuses to accept that New York, Victoria, I could go on, they're all banning fracking. And it just doesn't, it leaves, as I've said before, it makes me so angry and it leaves me speechless. But then I try to think, well, anger isn't the answer. You need to channel that anger and make positive action. And your Australian brothers, or the monks, was it?
Yeah, Brian Monk.
They're completely right. We all need to now. We stand there and we say, "You're not doing this. You're not. We've said no, and it will not happen." And you know, that's what we're going to do, because it's not going to happen. And when, you know, when there is social injustice, then always protests will follow. And that's because we followed every legal avenue open to us. We have been polite. We have followed it to the letter of the law, every avenue open to us, and we've been shafted, basically. And so, you know, that's when people regroup and then decide, okay, well, that's where if they bring the lorries in, we will be slow walking, we will be back sort of blocking the entrances to the sites, we will do all the things that we possibly can, but it will be legal and it will be peaceful and lawful, because that's the way we've always run this campaign, and it will continue to be like that too.
So this is, I mean, one of the things that struck me about North Yorkshire, and it was the same in East Yorkshire as well, is that the vast majority of people that I've got to know over the past couple of years, for many of them, this is the first time ever they've actually had calls or any kind of motivation whatsoever to challenge the establishment.
Yeah, I mean, I count myself as one of those. I've been aware of things as I've been raising my family, and I've felt angry at the injustice of various things, but I've never had to get up off my backside or felt I needed to and take part in something. And believe you me, it could be 100 miles away from where I live. I would still be doing it, because I was aware of fracking 3.5 years ago, before it sort of loomed its sort of ugly head here, before I was aware of it happening here. And I then thought, that cannot be a good thing, and that's awful. And then lo and behold, it's come here, and I just think, you know, you have to stand up to this. You cannot allow these greedy companies, backed by our government, who obviously have vested interests, to rape our lives and the countryside and leave devastation in their wake for our children and our grandchildren to have responsibility for. That's why I'm doing this. I'm a grandmother. I will not let that happen. Their health and well-being is far too important to allow anything like that to happen. And to expect them to be left to have the responsibility of the clear up afterwards is just disgraceful.
Well, and I mean, you're absolutely right about your observation about Kevin Horinrake. I mean, I made the observation right from his appointment, because of course he replaced Anne McIntosh, who was vehemently anti unconventional gas exploitation. So she was removed. She was basically told she was going to be deselected, but we'll make it painless for you. We'll offer you a seat in the Lords. So she went off to the Lords, where of course, I mean, she's out of the way basically. And Kevin Horinrake was put in there to effectively drive through the agenda. And, when he came back from Pennsylvania, what struck me was when he started talking about, he wanted this buffer zone, he clearly hadn't done his homework, because, he must have known that, or should have known, that the Kirby Misperton well, was literally about half a kilometre from well, it's even less from the nearest residence. It's literally about 200 metres, I think, from the nearest residence. But it's the entire village basically sits within that 1 kilometre, which is way inside what he was proposing as a buffer zone.
Yeah, exactly. I was nearly very rude then, but I won't be. But yeah, it's crazy. And he's come back, having spoken to people in Pennsylvania, and told us that he was satisfied that it could be done safely, blah, 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 the same old story. Our regulations are gold standard, we can do it more safely. Well, that's a load of baloney. They don't have that evidence, because the only times fracking has happened in this country, there have been problems. And they stopped it, didn't they, in Lancashire, because of earthquakes, all sorts. So they cannot assure us it can be done safely. We cannot trust them that the pipeline, which is way past its sell-by date now anyway, that runs between the KMA and Napton, they can't be sure that's not going to leak, let alone any new pipes they put in. It is crazy. And he lied, actually. He was, he said he was satisfied, and that and some of the things that he said about the people he'd spoken to have since, those very people have said, well, that's not what we told him.
Yeah, he's very selective in his hearing. And this is a quote from him on the BBC, where he's actually on the Kirby Misperton well site here. And, I mean, he basically might as well be the PR manager for Third Energy, because here he is saying, I believe we can do it in a safe way, in a way that protects the landscape. I mean, basically the guy has no interest in taking any cognizance of the information that's been presented to him. And, Sue, I've been obviously speaking with people in the industry, in politics, and I can honestly say that I have not yet spoken to a single one that actually acknowledges that there are any problems whatsoever with this process. I mean, it's like a mental illness.
It's very odd, isn't it, that they have this sort of there's a blockage that is that the information, the truth is just they cannot admit to any of it, because then that opens the floodgates for us to say, well, actually, then therefore you should not be doing it, and there. So they've got, it's almost like this. Oh, la, we're not listening. We can't be seen to be understanding the process. We've been told, and we must follow the party line, and we are going to frack the bejesus out of the whole country, but Yorkshire in particular at the moment.
Yeah, the whole of the north of England, basically, yes, Lancashire and Yorkshire, yeah.
And it's I'm really you can tell I'm getting really cross. It is just outrageous, and it is so unacceptable, and you know that they are in for one hell of a fight basically, because we won't stop. That, you know, it carries on. We help other groups. There's new groups forming all the time, and we're all helping and advising and going to their meetings and doing anything we can to support new people as they become aware of what's happening on their doorsteps too.
Well, you know, for 4 years, this has been the fastest growing social movement this country has seen. And the wonderful thing about it is it really embraces the entire spectrum. You know, and we may not all agree on much else. You know, we may have different opinions, different political views, but, you know, the one thing that absolutely keeps us focused is that we have this absolute cohesion against this abomination.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, actually. And what also is so fantastic is that because all the groups are different and we all approach the campaign in different ways, and there is no one body overseeing or coordinating anything, the frackers haven't got a clue what any of us are up to at any one time, and that really does make us very powerful. They don't get what we're up to, and we're very careful, obviously, not to let any actions or plans too soon out of the bag. But and it really rattles them.
Well, really, I mean, you know, they would love to see a national organisation, and of course, there have been a few people who have you know, tried to do that. But fortunately, the vast majority of people see, you know, exactly what you've just described: the power of you know, the 1,000 and rapidly growing local community groups across the country becoming very, very powerful. But it's not all over yet, because, of course, you were down in London last week for the judicial review. And interestingly, the judge hearing the review was actually the judge who presided over the Balcombe eviction hearing back in September 2013, Justice Lang.
Yeah, and she, I mean, again, I wasn't there for the first, I was there, but I went off to Barclays at Canary Wharf during the hearing for that day to hand them a very large postcard.
Let's have a look at that. I got a picture of that. So tell us what's going on here.
Well, we contravened all the security of Canary Wharf, apparently, and they rushed down on us very quickly. But when they realised how polite and how polite and how what's the word I'm looking for? We weren't threatening.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're very calm.
They were very, very kind, and the security guys actually facilitated getting someone from Barclays and from their legal team to come and talk to us. And they thought we were handing them a normal size postcard, and then when we handed them that one, they were very surprised. And I made a big thing of saying, really, you should keep this. It looked lovely on your wall.
Well, let's have a look at the back. Let's have a look on the back, because there's a message on the back signed from the people of Rydale.
Yeah, and Adela, Monica and I actually signed it ourselves. And I said to them that they should keep this postcard because in 50, 70 years' time, we would be thought of in the same way as the suffragettes are now, and it would be worth a lot of money. So
I think you might be right. Let's just take a look at this is outside the Royal Courts of Justice. So, you know, there was a good crowd that came down from North Yorkshire, and I know you had a few other people from elsewhere in the country there. And it was a 2-day hearing. It
was.
And Justice Lang has decided to defer her ruling. I mean, unless you know anything, I'm not aware of any decision that's been made yet.
No, as far as I'm aware, there is no decision. We were told it could be today or tomorrow, which was much quicker than we were initially led to expect. But you never know with these things, so we just wait and see, basically, with fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, the government has been consistent in its lies and deceit and obfuscation all the way through this. And just last week, coincidentally, when you were at the Royal Courts, of course, it was revealed that the British government had deliberately delayed the publication of the unredacted DEFRA report until after Lancashire County Council had made their decision. And this is actually one of the quotes from that report, that this is one of the redacted quotes: "Shale gas may transform a previously pristine and quiet natural region, bringing increased industrialization. As a result, rural economy businesses that rely on clean air, land, water, and/or a tranquil environment may suffer losses from this change, such as agriculture, tourism, organic farming, hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation." Now, I mean, I did a quick search, and I looked at the number of organic farms in the area, and there's not necessarily that many. But, you know, there are some very, very ancient lands there, and some are farmed organically. And there's one in particular in Lancashire called Gaze Gill. And although it's just to the north of a licensed area, I think the owner there is starting to, fortunately, take a bit of an interest. We don't have the time, unfortunately, to look at the detail, but those who do want to look at those emails, then go to Ruth Hayhurst's absolutely remarkable drillordrop.com website, where she has written an outstanding piece there on this delayed release, and actually quoting from the emails. Well, of course, I addressed this when we were producing Voices from the Gas Fields. We started the editing a little under 2 years ago, and of course we released it on March 21st, 2015. But this is an extract from Voices from the Gas Fields, and this is what I had to say about the outrageous redactions in the DEFRA report back then. In 2014, DEFRA commissioned a report to look at the impact of the unconventional gas industry on rural communities. After that report had not been released, some 6 months after it had been commissioned, a Freedom of Information request revealed that the report had been heavily redacted. In fact, the report was eventually released with 63 sections removed, including the entire section on the impact that the industry would have on property prices in targeted areas.
Suppression is the instrument of totalitarian dictatorships. We don't do that sort of thing in a free country. We simply take a democratic decision not to publish it. Fine. And what am I supposed to say to the press in Parliament? Well, there is a well-established government procedure for deciding not to publish reports.
Is there? Really?
Of course. You simply discredit them.
Good heavens.
One of the government ministers claimed that the DEFRA report should never have been commissioned in the first instance. She claimed that the report was not analytically robust and was not therefore signed off by ministers. That, of course, is political speak for it didn't say what we wanted it to say. Anyone hearing of a landowner who is being approached by the gas industry, then we need to try to make the effort to get in touch with them and to encourage them to do their own research. As Brian Monk says many times, it started with just one well. And so far, that's all we've had in the UK, just one well franked. Let's make sure it stays that way. And welcome back to part 3 of Fracking Nightmare, and I'm joined tonight by Sue Goff from a village just outside Kirkby Misperton in North Yorkshire. Now, Sue, one of the things that has struck me is that we said earlier that many people have actually had cause to question the agenda of the establishment for the first time. But this has had the effect of people actually starting to dig even deeper and actually look at some of the other elements of British political life, if you like, that actually doesn't stand up to examination. So, I mean, I've seen people, you know, right across the age spectrum actually become very curious. And, this has stimulated their curiosity to look at other issues.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm not a huge trawler of the internet. I'm a bit busy trying to make my own artwork, really, and so I don't have time. But I know a lot of people who have looked into all sorts of other. It's like going down a rabbit hole, and then there's another branch, and then there's another branch, and you just keep going. And it is remarkable, really. The common thread, I think, is the way that people are lied to by the government, by their councillors, all following the party line and just doing as they're told, and it's nothing to do with democracy that we sort of have an idea that we actually are supposed to have in this country, and it's frightening, actually, and the problem with that is that you find out all these things, and then it starts to lay very heavily on your heart and your being, and then if you're not careful, and it's happened, I've seen it happen, and I get overwhelmed with the small part I have to play, that people get sick. People have been unwell and despondent, and talk about health and well-being. It's been affected before the fracking's even started in this area because of the stress and the strain of being involved in the campaign. It's a relentless thing, and lots of people, and people I know have said, we just want it all to go away, but we know it's not going to, and we know we can't stop because it will, it really will come if we don't keep going and doing what we're doing.
Absolutely.
It's a horrible, horrible situation for people to find themselves in, and especially people who have never been involved in anything political in any way, shape or form in their lives. It's a big burden to shoulder, actually, which is why, sorry.
As I say, it's a big education, isn't it? It's a massive education.
Massive education, but also the strength of Frack-Free Rydale. We're quite a large group now, so people can step back and other people fill the breach, and we support each other like that. So in a way, it makes the community stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say that I think that in Frack-Free Rydale is, I won't necessarily say perfect, but I mean, it is a wonderful model. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for innovation and creativity. But the cohesion within Frack-Free Rydale and the Yorkshire groups is absolutely outstanding. And any differences of opinion seem to be dealt with fairly rapidly.
Yeah, they are. I think it comes from a mutual respect for each other and a trust that there are people who can deal with certain aspects. I mean, I am in awe of our people that have dealt with the legal side of things, who've read every page of those documents. It's incredible. But we all play a part. We all do our best at what we're good at, and we all support each other. And in actual fact, we didn't realise that we were held in such high esteem because we were just getting on and doing the best we could.
Yeah, but that's absolutely what it's all about. And I mean, that's exactly, of course, what I was discussing with John and Val Marga. I mean, this is the graphic from episode 98 last week. Jerry activism, and we were talking about the power of community, and particularly retirees, because retirees or people that are self-employed, they have the flexibility of time. Many of the retirees, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly in, arch Tory constituencies, they also have a degree of financial independence. And, the power of community coming together is truly amazing. And in some ways, I have to say thank you very much to the British government for creating this catalyst that has brought this country together, brought communities together, more so than probably anything else since poll tax, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So we're just in the last few minutes of the programme, Sue, and I just want to go to the other end of the country. Do stay with me, but we have a similar situation at Leith Hill, and although the south hasn't been targeted in quite the same way as the north of England. Nonetheless, the Weald area, the North Weald area, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, is also being targeted. And it's the classic case again, just like Kirby Misperton, if the mother frackers do get their bits in the ground, and of course they have at Horse Hill, then, you know, if they're able to extend their reach, then potentially in a few years, the whole of the Weald will become a grid of either nodding donkeys, just like around outskirts of Bakersfield in California, or if they do go, when they go for the unconventional gas resources, and they have every intention of going for the unconventional gas resources because that's what they've told their investors. So, you know, once again, whatever they say, oh, no, we're just going to do an exploratory well, we're just looking at the conventional geology. No, that's the deceit and obfuscation. But the targeted area is this beautiful village. I mean, you know, it's just like Kirby Misperton in some ways. In fact, it's, I think, a smaller village than Kirby Misperton. This is Cold Harbour, just to the south of Dorking. And this is Leith Hill. This is the tower on the top of Leith Hill. I think the tower was built to take Leith Hill just over the 1,000 feet mark. So this makes it the highest point in the south of England. And the community, although it's taken a bit of a while to you know, get going, but the community has really come together now. And you know, just imagine that this is what they want to put inside a wooded area in an area of outstanding natural beauty. And Surrey County Council rejected the application from Europa, but it was overturned by the British government. So we have exactly the same situation in Surrey as we have in Lancashire. And I mean, this is the rig that was brought down to Borkum. This is the quadrilla rig brought to Borkum in late July of 2013. But this is the type of road they want to bring it up. This is the only access road from Dorking to the well site at just to the north of Cold Harbour village. But the camp has been there now for, I believe, nearly 4 weeks, and it's growing rapidly. And the camp has tremendous support from not just the residents of Dorking and Cold Harbour, but all the surrounding villages. And on Saturday, they have a walk. And I think the plan is, there's various start points. The plan is to meet at the tower at about 11 o'clock or so. So you know, wherever it is you're walking from, walk up to the tower and then come down to the camp. And you know, the one thing that you will find at the camp is the people at the camp are extremely well informed. You know, this is not your swampies and, you know, your tree huggers. These are people who have educated themselves and have committed themselves to doing whatever it takes to make sure that Europa get an extremely hard ride in building the well site in this area of outstanding natural beauty. Now, Sue, final words. You said that you know, basically the community is going to do whatever it takes. You know, and I think that, you know, the key point you make is that it will be peaceful.
Definitely.
And it will be lawful, not necessarily legal perhaps, but it will be lawful.
It will be lawful, it will be peaceful, and we have had enormous support from outside of Rydale and Yorkshire as well. So I have so much respect for people at Leith Hill. I haven't been there yet, but I'm planning to visit them next year as soon as I can. And I think that they are doing a fantastic job because they are the people on the ground monitoring what's going on, and on behalf of everybody else. So I have, as I said, respect for them, and I will do everything I can to support what they're doing as well.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, they have the other added issue of they're not able to have a fire because it's Forestry Commission land, so they have other issues in terms of you know, their welfare and well-being as the temperatures drop. So yeah, and I hope to be joining the walk on Saturday, and you know, to visit the camp, and you know, hopefully we'll get a couple of people talking to us for that we can then show the discussion on Fracking Nightmare next week, episode 100.
Send my best wishes, please. That would be wonderful.
I will indeed, Sue. So thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Okay, now, just before we go, I'm just going to flash up on screen, because apparently it didn't go up on screen before. For those people who do wish to support my fracking awareness activities, then there's two websites that you can go to, either www.frackingnightmare.com or enrcrane.com. And if you go to those home pages, you'll see what you need to do there. And I'm extremely grateful for all the people who help me stay on the road, because yet again, for the fourth year running, I have clocked well over 30,000 miles in my efforts to ensure that this abomination is understood by the widest possible number of people across the country. And like I said, that after episode 100 next Monday, I will be off air until the new year. But please do feel free to join me on Twitter, because I certainly enjoy responding to the outrageous PR, and particularly INEOS PR, as they try and blag that it's a safe process. And of course, INEOS, let's just refresh, INEOS will not be fracking for any benefit to the country, i.e. Nothing to do with energy security. INEOS are looking to frack purely to reduce their own costs of gas for their industrial and refinery activities. So with that, we are going to play out with a different type of video from Standing Rock. And there are many ways in which we can challenge this abomination and challenge the outrageous corporatocracy. And one of those is to visualize what it is that you want to see in terms of the desired outcome. Of course, that's not enough. We do actually have to get involved and participate in the process. But the visualization is a key element of bringing about the changes that we all know we need to see. So we're going to play out with this video, very different one, fortunately, than we saw earlier from Standing Rock, and in solidarity with all the people having to endure the outrageous behaviour of the law enforcement agencies in the supposed land of the free. I'll see you next week.
To get that dollar, treat is being broken, no respect or honor. Listen close, my friend, this is happening. Warrior, warrior, if you are around, stand up like a mountain. Rise up from the earth, one love, one message. I know that we are strong in spirit, and if you are the righteous, hear it. If you are around, stand up like a mountain. Burn the sage and cedar, spirit is the leader. Warrior, warrior, the clouds are getting heavy, thunder beings are ready. Warrior, warrior, where the oil spills we cannot are the sons and daughters. Gather all your friends, this is happening. Warrior, warrior, if you are around, stand up like a mountain. Rise up from the earth, one love, one message. I know that we are strong in spirit, and if you are the righteous, hear it. If you are around, stand up like a mountain. Water is life, life from the water. Water is life, elders they told